Hello, this is Fam Electric Ghost, and we have Possimiste on the line, right? You can hear me?
Hello.
Hi, so it's great to have you on. Just a
Same
little,
here.
it's great. But yeah, just to give a brief background, we do a show, a podcast where we interview international artists from all over the world, and we're glad to have Possimiste on the show today. And I sent you the questions while you run through those.
hmm
I was reading your Spotify, so if you don't mind, maybe I can read a little bit of that so our listeners can get a little background.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
So,
interesting what you found.
yeah, Possimist is a young artist whose music has often been described as whimsical and fairy tale-ish and free-spirited indie pop. Your career launched in 2011 with the song Behind the Seas, and you topped the Creative Commons chart, making you one of the most downloaded acts on the CC world. And you grew up in Estonia, right?
Yes, true.
Yeah. And so now you, where are you located now? Because it's saying that you're in Iceland. Is that true? Are you in
Yeah,
Iceland?
in
Cool.
Iceland. Yeah.
Yeah. So you recorded your first storybook EP, Wanderer, in 2013, and that's when you moved to Iceland. And you're working on a new record, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
they're
So
full
awesome.
length.
Full length record. So yeah. So it's great to have you on. You have a really awesome sound. It kind of reminded me of Bjork.
Thank you.
Yeah, and a little Tori Amos in there too, but more Bjork. But I do hear some of Tori's like more experimental stuff is like in line with what you're doing.
Oh, I should actually really check into this because I haven't listened to a lot of story.
Yeah, Tori sometimes does some electronic stuff. You know, she's mostly like a classical piano player that plays pop music with a kind of classical tint to her piano playing, but she does integrate a lot of electronic music lately in some of her work. Um, so it's interesting. Um, and just her vocals, her vocal style has some similarities. But yeah, so you've been working hard for a while, and you've got a really awesome sound, and you're a
Thanks.
singer songwriter, and we love to talk to singer songwriters. So,
Yeah.
so like I guess I'm gonna ask, like it says like you started early, but like when did you first get into music? At what age?
Well, I was actually 2 years old when I told my mom and dad that I wanted to go and into the singing thing.
Wow,
So, and they just listened. I was
that's cool.
lucky. I was lucky that that I got parents who just like I don't know. It's kind of random, that people listen to their kid.
So when they heard you, did they get you instruments or get you lessons? What did they do?
I just told them like pretty clearly that I wanted to go to the lessons. So
Mm-hmm.
I just went to the lessons, or like it was like this kind of like a singing school, but it was more like a community based thing. So like we learned the songs, like there were many other kids we played. We learned like some instruments and we performed as well, and we
That's
dressed
cool.
like, yeah. So yeah, and I kept doing this like nonstop, like even when I grew up, like we had this like girls group that we kept like singing and performing a lot of like traditional Estonian stuff too. And like meanwhile, and then I started like already like yeah, when I think I was like 5 years old when I like recorded my first song. But
So
making music, it was like or creating my own songs. It was like my secret project that was like hidden from the world.
so do you use like do you have your own recording studio in your home, or do you go to recording studios?
Well, actually, my best friends are like running new studio in Reykjavik, and so I'm really lucky to get to work there. So yes, I'm working in a studio. It's like it's let's say like 95% professional studio. So
Oh, cool. So do you have anything in your home? Do you do like your own home recordings on a digital audio workstation like a Pro Tools or Ableton, or do you just go to the studio?
I just have everything in the studio now. Actually, I don't even have internet at home. I just try to keep my home as my like kind of a sacred
Oh,
of
that's
out of,
interesting.
yeah. I think it's really healthy to kind of have a place, home that is just like you, and that's a place where I write. I write like, yeah, I write a lot of like it's a good place to focus. There's no like disturbance. It's a good
So
place.
when you write, are you just writing lyrics or are you writing the actual music?
Well, I normally get songs like the lyrics and melody come at the same time. So and it can come in like random places, but it normally doesn't come like everything at once. It normally comes like maybe like you get like this chorus, and then you need to puzzle together, and like it's a place where put these puzzles together.
Mm-hmm. So at home, do you have any like instruments like guitars or pianos, or everything's in the studio?
No, I don't have much. I just have like wooden frogs and some instruments that like when I have been touring, then because I have played with now like a lot of different people, and
Mm-hmm.
I have a little flute that my flute player gave me.
Okay, cool. So you have some just acoustic instruments, but nothing like not keyboards or synths or
everything for like music making is in the studio.
in the studio.
Yeah.
That's interesting because I'm an electronic musician. I have like a home studio with all my modes and my Rolands in my house.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it's just kind of like I kind of, that's I just write all the time, so I like having it right with me. But
Yeah, I totally.
different artists have different ways of doing it. So you have a different philosophy. It's kind of like the old school, like a long time ago. Like artists would always go to the studio, so they didn't, everything was in the studio. They would just go. Bands, famous bands like the Stones and the Who and everybody, they would go to the studio to actually record. They wouldn't have it in their homes as much.
Yeah, actually, I forgot to mention that thing that like I actually spend like 90% of the time in the studio, not home.
In the studio. Oh, so you say because you kind of live in the studio, your home is your home.
Well,
Where I made my home my studio, so I wouldn't have to go to the studio.
yeah, exactly. I made the opposite actually. So like for me, it's really important to just like get up and go somewhere.
Yeah, I guess it's good to get out.
Exactly.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I have done those days, and I have just like been like 3 days just like rolling straight in the studio, and it feels great. But it's a little bit wild.
Yeah, the studio is like, when you go to a studio where there's a lot more people, it's a different kind of scene, you know. Than like a home studio is like you can be a little more insular, but like to have an interaction with people, I think that's interesting. Is like so when you're in the studio, you got like the recording engineers, you've got other people maybe come in and help play on your stuff. So do you collaborate with other musicians on your material, or do you do everything in the studio yourself?
Well, I do everything mostly in the studio myself.
Cool.
Like let's say, yeah, maybe like 95%.
Well,
But
wow, that's really cool. Because
yeah, it's
go
a
on.
kind of it's a lot of work, but
Yeah.
at the same time, I'm really lucky to have the same like my really good friends collaborating in this album. So because the songs are gonna be really different and from different genres, and the
Mm-hmm.
talk to different people, and so I'm really really happy to collaborate with, because I don't feel my music much connected to my ego. I feel that songs are just rather something like universal and pure that different people can share. And so I feel that if some songs have found or calling some certain people that they want to collaborate, so like either it doesn't need to be music wise, but it can be also like visual wise, or like video wise, or
Yeah.
whatever wise, then I'm just so it's just magical how songs find the people to that who can like execute them in the best way. So I feel that there's like at the same time like many collaborations in a ways that that there's song, and then I'm happy to give that part to those people who feel it the most.
I think it's interesting because like when you're a singer songwriter and you really control your music, you have like a clear, like a really clear vision of what you want to do. I've been a like producer of my own material, kind of like a one person band, kind of similar to what you're saying.
Yeah.
And it sometimes what's good. I mean, I used to be in bands, but then I had this vision, and I like collaboration, but sometimes you have a vision that like you really feel it and you know what it should be, and then like if you play all the instruments or play all the parts, then you kind of can make it exactly the way you envisioned it.
Oh my God. I know so well.
Yeah. So I mean, I totally identify with that because that's what I do with my music. And I've always been like big fans of got people to do that, like Hendrix, Stevie Wonder. There's certain artists that had a vision and they were really good at executing. Like Prince. Prince was really good at being a one person band most of the time. He executed all those ideas pretty much by himself most of the time. So sometimes it's good to collaborate, and artists like Prince, you see him collaborate with people, you get a different picture of what he's doing. But it's always interesting to me to listen to the singer songwriters, the people that have their own vision for music. And it's always cool to me to see people who get produced heavily and are more maybe like singer performers, and they have other people that write for them. But I've always had a soft spot for artists to actually do it, like the way you're doing it, which I think is really interesting because you do have this kind of whimsical fairy tale kind of sound that's very much in the kind of spirit of like Bjork and really indie music and really avant-garde type of sound. I really like it.
Thanks. I think also it's like that I've been always wondering, like why those why this certain song like found me, then it must have maybe found me for a reason that I can maybe bring it to life the way that the songs want to come.
Oh, so you kind of like do you like feel like the muse? Like some people talk about like when they're artists that the universe kind of brings them the song or they're able to execute the song because they feel something, and then that what they feel is kind of like they find the song. The song like exists somehow, and you find it and you put it give it to the world, but you feel something and you're able to bring that out, and that's kind of like being able to have the muse kind of go through you. Do you understand? Yeah, I have this kind of feeling. But I think a lot of artists that have that kind of capability, I think you're in that zone from what I can tell.
Yeah, I believe in. I think music it's just really weird sensation of like it's really hard to describe the feeling of like this moment, and you just feel that you're under some kind of possession.
Sometimes I feel like a song kind of writes itself. It's like I kind of like I get into a mode, and then it just comes through. Sometimes I've had songs that I wasn't even thinking, and all the lyrics came through at like one take. I somehow it just came to me, and then boom, it just works. I mean, I kind of work in a jazz kind of way, and I found that sometimes there are artists that they kind of just it comes out of them, and it just you can't stop it. It just like sometimes you have a feeling, and it just is there. And it's strange, but sometimes some songs kind of write themselves, and then other songs are kind of a lot harder. They take you months to do because you keep on going back and refining, and it's kind of tortured. And then other songs are kind of like they just come to you like all at once.
It's I totally believe in this, but I've been also wondering, like maybe it's not even that much about the song, but like the state that you're currently in, that maybe sometimes like you have more like, you know, the states where you're limiting yourself more, or the other times you're not like, your human self is kind of like not interfering, you
Yeah,
know, not letting brain think, you know, not letting the blockages, and so the song can just like pass through, you
yeah. I
know,
think if you
without
overthink it,
the.
you know, you could end up doing
Mhm.
like what Springsteen did with Born to Run. It took him like 6 months. And it's a great song, but he was
Uh,
like very tortured. He took like 6 months to build it. And he just kept on going at it, going at it. And there are other things like when Hendrix would just put something down, it was like, that's it. It would just come, you know. And sometimes
yeah,
he's like, you know, or John Coltrane would just have a feeling and boom, it would be there, you know. And so it's interesting
Mhm.
to me. It's like you said, if you don't let your head get in the way, if you don't like your human stuff, you
yeah,
kind of like go with the kind of spirits in the air, in the ether. You know, there's something out there in the universe, and you can tap into it if you don't overthink it. That's probably
yeah.
what I felt, but maybe you feel the same way.
I totally feel the same way, and I think it's actually, it's so strange how, you know, if I start thinking that way, then if you start like you know, drawing parallels, like how music writing can actually help people to also like, you know, become more, maybe more kind human
Mm.
being, you know, like parts, you know, not that, you know, you like limit those blockages like when you're writing music, but it's maybe, you know, if you just practice the same in the way that you're living, that you just, you know, you just don't let your, I don't know, analyzing or like, you know, too much of this, you know, just, yeah, how do you call
Yeah,
it,
yeah. I
judgment,
think a lot of
you
times,
know, let
like if
that
you just
get
get
in your
in a
way.
good state, like you're meditating and you're just at peace, you're not kind of distraught. I mean, not that
Mm.
there's some music like Kurt Cobain and Nirvana. You know, he was very distraught. He had a lot of emotional issues, but some, you know, and some artists can take the emotional issues they have and then let it out, and it
Yeah.
can be kind of jarring. But it is their truth. You know, some people's truth is a little more jarring than somebody else's, and so some music comes out
Mhm.
kind of very gritty or very, you know, kind of like it's like you're revealing everything and it's kind of raw, and other things are very beautiful. But you know, there's different ways to go at
Yeah,
it. Sometimes things come out and they're very pretty, very beautiful, very calming, and then other things are more jarring or more, you know, punk or guttural. And but it's still different. It's a different place. It's a different type of art, but it's all valid. Um, different places that people come from.
exactly, and maybe different places also, like, you know, maybe that's why it has been like kind of journey for me with myself, that, you know, the songs that I'm writing there, like in all kinds of different genres, you know, and it's, you know, of course it doesn't make, like if you take it in the earth, if you think it like in the music business, it's really, it doesn't make sense, and it's stupid, because, you know, then, you know, how do you sell your, I
Yeah,
don't know, let's say like, you know, if you write like you have one song in like total, like, I don't know, some kind of musical slash like heavy metal style, you know, and then you make an ambient song, and then you make a pop song, and then you make a dance song, and then you make like
yeah. You're
this,
more
I don't
eclectic.
know,
Like if you're
pop,
more
you know,
eclectic, people like your agents have a hard time like marketing you because they want you to stay in one lane. You know, but
exactly,
I,
you know.
yeah,
But you know,
I'm a believer that artists should be allowed to do whatever they're capable of doing. And just because one type of song is a hit, they shouldn't replicate that like 100 times. Um, that if they want to do a different genre, or they want to go a different way, they shouldn't be like forced to just stay in one lane. You know, I think there are a lot of great artists that you look at, they developed and they went from different phases. You know, if you look, yeah, if you look at
mhm,
the Beatles, they were like the original teeny bopper band. You know, they were like the original, like you know, young, like you know, they have these kids. They're like new kids on the block. I mean, the original Beatles was like not a bubblegum kind of, you know, wasn't a serious like art band. and then they became serious musicians and wrote very powerful songs that no one would have thought that they were doing that when you listen to Help, or you listen to the first things that they wrote. But then when you get to Sgt. Pepper's and Abbey Road, he's like, wow, they just totally became a different band. And I think that, you know, sometimes people today don't seem to allow artists to develop that way. you know, they could you actually see a band actually become like a Beatles today with the way the industry is? I don't know. Because I don't know if they would allow them to do that.
Well, you know, and it's also like, I don't know, I just always like to think it that way, you know, look at the little kids, you know, they're all so cute. And if all the kids, all the people would stay that cute, you know, the parents would say them that, you know, stop it, don't grow, get more ugly, you know, more horrible.
Yeah, it's just, you know, I just kind of come from the age where, you know, there was like a lot of musicianship and experimentation, and that's why I was drawn to your work, because I see that you're in the kind of vein of being like a true artist. Not that would put down people that maybe aren't, but there are some people who are more oriented in trying to get hits, and that's not bad, but I like to see people trying to create their art, you know. And if it happens that you get a lot of people that recognize you, that's cool. But a lot of artists, you know, it's like going back to like Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground. I mean, when they worked with Andy Warhol, they were doing all this really avant-garde stuff, and it became famous and successful after the fact. You know, when they did it, it wasn't really that well received. But sometimes you can create art and be like William Blake, you know, the great poet. He wasn't well known until after he was gone. You know, sometimes art, you do art because you love it or you believe in it, not necessarily because you're trying to make a hit. If it becomes a hit, that's cool. But I think the driving force behind art should be actually trying to create art for art, you know, and if it happens to get an audience, and then you can pitch to that audience and find out where your audience is. But, you know, that's kind of my philosophy, and other people might disagree because they want to make a hit. But
I totally 100%, you know, agree with you, because also, like, you know, I don't know, like, even if you think about the fame and everything, you know, like, you know, it's also like it's a good and bad thing, you know, because at the same time, you know, you don't, it's also pressure, you know, and like, then we are artists, and then we are, you know, at the same time also human beings, you know, and as soon as the industry comes like at the back in a kind of really, you know, big, let's say, you know, suddenly you have 100 people working for you, you know.
But then it becomes like an obligation. You don't want to have those people go out of work, and then you might actually, you know, start feeling guilty that you're not making hits, because then the people working with you, then they don't have work.
Exactly, you know, and I feel that the artists are, you know, we have that, you know, we have actually the power to kind of, you know, to inspire people to not like live in fear. And so, you know, I would never want to kind of like be an artist who is creating because of fear, or, you know, taking some decisions because I'm afraid or scared, because I just care about people, you know. And it doesn't, you know, it doesn't mean it needs to be so, but, you know, if you get somewhere, I think you should get somewhere because you are your true self, and you have enough people who listen to you because they like or love unconditionally who you are, and they're kind of like willing to explore with you where you're going, you know. They don't need to like that music or connect with that music, but I think you know, it's just interesting sometimes, you know, like people don't agree with the other people, you know, but if you are willing to just be open ear and interested in, like, you know, how do other people experience the same world, you know, like, then I think actually there's like, it's just nice thing. I think it's just really important to kind of like find the right, find just the way for an artist, like how they can be true and honest
Yeah,
and
I
fearless.
think it seemed like if you go back to an artist like David Bowie. David Bowie was a real original, and he was very avant-garde and super, very indie oriented. He did a lot of things that weren't commercial, and they did a lot of things that were commercial. And he kind of created all these characters, and he went into different genres. He went to this Berlin genre when he did Low and Heroes. He did all this stuff that was very avant-garde, didn't sell as well as like Ziggy or Tonight's the Night. I mean, he could go different directions, and he did it because of what he would feel. He would have a real kind of artist sensibility that is like rare. I think you've got that kind of thing with what you're doing. But I think it's hard to see that that the industry promotes artists like yourself and Bowie level artists anymore, because it seems to be hard to get to that place, because they're not so willing to be patient with artists. If they're trying to do things, you have to end up being indie or be on a label that's more like a smaller label that understands that. Which I think it looks like that you have that kind of relationship with the companies you're working with. But yeah, it's difficult sometimes in the States, especially. Like there's certain limitations to what you can do in the industry, what they want and what you want to do, and so you kind of got to be true to yourself, and then hope that the world eventually comes to you with your vision. But yeah, I think being an artist is it's difficult, but you do it because you love it. I never did any music because I wanted to make, I thought I was gonna make it super big. I do it because I love to do it. I collaborate with people because I like to be a musician. I'm a musician, so you do the work, and if it finds an audience, it finds an audience. But yeah, it's just interesting. So it sounds like you go to the studio, so you don't use like a digital audio workstation. But when you're in the studio, what kind of instruments do you play? What instruments do you play? Or what type of work do you do in terms of like instruments?
So basically, I still use like a DAW. I work a lot with Logic. This is where I do my main things. But yeah, I use synthesizers now more and more.
So when you use synthesizer, because I'm a synthesizer player. I mean, I use Moogs and Rolands and Prophets and Euroracks. So are you using like soft synths? Or are you using like real analog synths like Moogs and Prophets, or are you using plugins on your DAW? What type of synthesizers are you using?
Use like synthesizer. Then I'm not really good at names.
So you might not know what the model is, but you just
I'm just like a crazy kid, and then just I just go.
You might just be in a studio, and they might give you access to something you might not know that's like a Prophet 12 or it's a Mini Moog, or you just go for what it sounds like or what you want to do for your music. That's fine. Yeah, I'm more of a technical musician, but that doesn't mean that's good or bad. But I'm like, some people know what they're using, but you go by feel, so I understand that.
Yeah, I should maybe with the next album, I promised myself that I'm gonna grow.
Well, it's cool. Like when you get interviewed, sometimes people may want to ask you are you using like a Juno 106 or using a Prophet or using a Moog, Mini Moog? Because there's certain sounds that are associated with certain models of synthesizers. Right. So if you say you use like a Juno 106, that kind of implies like a Church's sound. Or if you say you use a Moog, Mini Moog, it might imply that it sounds like Keith Emerson, or it sounds like Rick Wakeman from Yes. And so there's certain model synthesizers that have a history. So if you actually know the name of it, then people will kind of understand what tone you might be talking about.
Yeah. Then I'm mainly in the Yeah, I use like the 106 exactly. It has like this
Yeah,
nice,
106 is like churches
nice.
use it. A lot of synth wave bands, new wave bands used them. Back in the 80s, and they have a really good sound.
It's juicy. I don't know. It's like really alive.
Yeah, it's an
and
analog
warm.
sound, so I mean, analog tends to have more warmth than digital synths. Digital synths are cool, but I use a lot of analog synths. They seem to have a little bit more organic nature to them, and they can express your feelings in the chord structures you use on the analog synths. They can really convey a lot, and you can feel more than digital synths are good for like bells and pianos and things that are more orchestration, like violins and strings. But organic sounding analog synths, they're really good bass lines, they're really good patches or pads. So the more famous one, like a Jupiter 8 or a Prophet 5, they're known for like new wave era sound. Back in the like Duran Duran type of era, the Cure, bands like that, use synths like that. But
and it's so like in a ways it's, I don't know, I think it's also like if you now start thinking about collaboration, then it's actually amazing how those guys who like long time ago created those sounds, and the synthesizers, they're like actually really big parts of every song that's in a way created by them too.
Yeah, they just created that whole new wave movement, created like a whole they created a really awesome sounding period, kind of like disco is a known genre, right? It had certain bass lines, certain drum beats associated with it. New wave has certain like synthesizers associated with it. Reggae has like its own, so every genre has its own kind of association. And the hip hop actually uses a lot of a band called Funkadelic, Parliament Funkadelic. They heavily sampled a funk band, and so you got James Brown, Parliament Funkadelic are like the base of hip hop. So and those bands use like Moog, mini Moogs, and that's a synthesizer from Moog. It's like a very famous synth. But at the same time, bands like Yes and Genesis also used the Moog. And it's just a difference. Like the funk musicians use the Moog to create like bass lines that are like kind of like the foundation of like hip hop and rap. And then bands like Yes and Genesis, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, did use more classical structures, but with the same instrument. And so you have different feel from the same instrument being used different ways. But it's just interesting.
It is interesting, and it's and it's alive, and that if you just the way that I'm normally working, I just just push some buttons, it's just basically do really mindless stuff. But I know that I can never probably get back to the sound if I have already found that sound.
Yeah, I mean, part of being a synthesizer or working with synthesizers is they can actually change so much that they're kind of point in time. When you're using some synthesizers, that you can be very like it's that moment that you capture in the studio, and then you might not be able to, it'd be on tape, and you could always run it through a sequence or run it on a like CDJ or something. You could run it so you still can replicate it, but it's hard to actually reproduce it.
It's if you look at the sound wave, it's impossible.
I mean, I have some modes that they change from day to day. And when you turn it on, it sounds different every day because it's like organic. It's like even if you try to get back to the same sound, it doesn't exactly sound the same. Just because it's the nature of analog synths. Sometimes they just don't sound day to day the same way. They can kind of shift around because they're hand built and they're not manufactured in a more modern process. So they tend to not sound exactly as you might want them to sound. Which is actually, for an artist, I think it's a cool thing to have an instrument that is that variable. Then it allows you to do some things that, maybe today that's not what a lot of people want. They want to be able to get the same thing all the time. But I find it very useful to have instruments that shift a little bit or shift a lot. And then you can present that music in different ways. Even if I play that song live, it might not exactly be the way I originally did it.
Totally.
So yeah. So you said you like to collaborate with like all different types of artists, like visual artists and other filmmakers and things like that. Is that what you were talking about?
Mm-hmm.
So are you working with anybody now on your new project, like to have visuals to go with your music?
Yeah, so we actually, because I want Universe to be audiovisual album, because I see music, I happen to be
Oh,
that.
it's like a synesthesia.
That
You
can,
see the music.
yeah, so like every time, even if it doesn't even matter if I'm like listening to music or writing music, I kind of like just close my eyes and just, I didn't even have to close my eyes, but I just see the whole like movie in front of my
That's
eyes
cool.
or in the environment.
Yeah, I've kind of played with the
That's,
idea of synesthesia, where you kind of you can see notes, or you can see things, or you can like smell sound. You know, there's a concept that there's like a thing that can happen to you where your senses can actually, you know, see the notes, or you know, feel things that you normally, it's like a different sense. You're like, well, you don't really, your ears hear the note, but your eyes are seeing the note. So it's kind of like the idea
yeah,
of synesthesia is like sometimes your senses are overwhelmed in multiple ways, that you can smell the sound, you can taste the sound, you could, you know, see the sound is like, it's an idea. But it sounds like you do that happens to you. So it's interesting.
it have this, I have this condition.
With synesthesia, I think a lot of artists actually have it. I think it's part of their process. In order to be able to be a creative person, sometimes you have that kind of thing going on, that I think it allows you to be a creative person.
Yeah,
Because then you
I
can
think
feel
so.
more than what other people feel, and then you know how to actually put it into art. That you can take your feeling and put that in art. Not everybody can do that. You know, some people just they don't, they're not creators. But some people are in different levels, and it sounds like you've got that. And I think that's really cool, because I think that it puts your art in a different category. It puts your art in a different way to experience. I think anybody that listens to your music or will watch what you're working on is going to see the benefit of that kind of capability. I think it's a really good thing to be able to draw into that.
Yeah, I'm really, really, really thankful for that. And also, you know, but you know, at some point, sometimes, you know, at some point you realize that, because with my music I kind of want to have control over, and I normally collaborate with people who are kind of or just happen to, you know, have kind of that, our visions, like I either grow through
Mm-hmm.
them, that their vision starts, like, you know, if they suggest something new, then I need to like totally love it or learn to love it before I accept it, you
Yeah,
know.
that's interesting.
And so it happens, you know, that throw it or learn to love it.
Well, I think it's all musicians kind of grow from you know, getting different reference points. You know, if
Mm-hmm.
you look at a lot of musical genres, they're like hip hop is growing because it's pulling in jazz, it's pulling in aspects of punk music, it's pulling aspects of reggae, it's pulling multiple genres. So when the genre grows, it's because it pulls other genres. And then sometimes you
Mm-hmm.
have other genres, like disco kind of stagnated because it only pulled within itself, and it had a set structure, but then didn't go beyond that, and it kind of
Yeah.
fell apart, because in order to continue and to be vital, you have to kind of be able to progress.
Oh,
And I think,
totally.
you know, rock kind of got to a point where it wasn't progressing. There were points in rock where they were, you know, some bands were bringing in classical, like a band like Yes, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Some bands were bringing in like jazz elements, like Allman Brothers. Then when jazz bands became less adventurous, then the rock kind of got to a stagnation point. And now you see, like with hip hop and rap, you see a lot of cross pollination between genres, and it's been very powerful in actually moving forward. I think even EDM has a problem in some aspects if people get so caught up in the structure of an EDM song with the drop, and then they don't get beyond the structure of an EDM song. It has to be in that certain format. It'll kind of fall into the place that disco fell into if people aren't willing to take it in other ways. And I like what you're doing because it's not getting stuck, in one particular area. You're kind of pulling everything, which I think is the way to move forward in music, is to be able to pull from everything and be able to have a vision for it. And you've got that vision.
Well, I think it's also like, I don't know if it's like, right or wrong, even to kind of like that now we have all those books, that you can study all the forums and stuff like that, and like kind of how to manipulate in people's minds. And also the same thing, that dropping the, beat drops and everything, it like works mainly on the effect of surprise, that something comes, it just hits the point. But the thing is that if you listen to it too, if all the songs had, then, people know already what to expect. And so the same effect, like, just, I think it stops working at some point.
That's what happened with disco. Disco had a same kind of structure. And, it was a very dance-oriented, club-oriented genre, but it kind of played out because everybody heard it. They just went to the maximum amount of what you could do with it, and then it wasn't going any further. And I think that's why you get different forms. You get trance, you get synthwave, you get dark wave, you get, dubstep. But if you get too tied up into any one genre, I think what happens, like when you're great, the great artists that push things forward take multiple genres and mix them. Like Clash. I mean, Clash was a punk rock band, but with Sandinista, they mixed Afro rhythms with Caribbean rhythms and dance rhythms, and so it wasn't just being a straight punk band. They actually were different rhythmic territory, and so they ended up doing something that a lot of punk bands don't do. They get, some punk bands just get stuck in the same genre, but the Clash went beyond that. And I think that's what makes them different. The bands that stand out are the ones that actually push and mature and grow and find other ways to integrate different genres. Really, it ends up being, being a hybrid, or being a different, being able to pull other things in, and it makes something new because you're pulling other things in. And I think, that's my experiences. I think the artists that do that, then you see, things go forward.
Yeah, people who are not patient, like sometimes the impatience and that, people get like pissed off, Sometimes this is also like, it pushes rather forward.
Yeah, I think eventually people just want something new, and there's a drive for, something new. And so sometimes something new is actually something old. Sometimes people go back and they call like 1920s bebop, and they bring a bebop into the future, and nobody heard a bebop song for a long time, and then somebody does an electronic bebop and it sounds new. But it's because you pulled something that's not as well known, and then that's actually brilliant in its own way, because if you can pull like a genre that's not current and then bring it into the modern world and mix it in, then you can do a lot of really interesting things. And that's what I've always looking for, artists that are doing something that just like, oh wow, I haven't heard that in a long time, or I haven't heard anybody try that way of doing a song. So yeah, I've always been very interested in anybody's kind of doing that, and then seeing where it came from. But yeah, I think it's really interesting. So what do you have a tentative release date for the new project you're working on?
2020, but at the moment the next thing, talking about the collaborations with the visual artist, then we did last year, we have done a lot. We did a video with Michael Starkey, who is an American director. Then we did in Indonesia with Jody Suhari, who is an Indonesian director. And so now we're next month gonna do a film based on one of my songs in England.
Oh, cool.
Diana.
Where's that gonna get released? Is it gonna be on what platform?
It's gonna be part of my album, but it's gonna be, we aim for festivals, and it's gonna be LGBT, so it's a really it's really clear like social message
Oh,
of
that's cool.
love.
So you're politically active with your music. That's cool. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
I think the power of like people who believe in the same thing working together. It just and who are sharing the vision, and somehow it's just weird how people find each other, and that the art actually, it seems like the song idea is just somehow doing all the work, that I think even though I was kind of like for a long time I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna do everything, I'm strong, I'm doing everything alone.
Yeah.
Then the strength is sometimes sometimes to admit that I need help.
Yeah. Well, I think as an
And
artist, like eventually, if you work by yourself, you kind of hit the wall, kind of like the disco wall. Like, because
yeah.
if you don't have somebody else, like it's like I was in bands, and I'm a piano player, so I would write a lot of the song. So because on the piano you can write all the parts. So I had like the bass part, piano part, the guitar part, all the parts. But then when I gave the parts to the rest of the band, the bass player would change what I gave him. And because he's a bass player, so he's going to take the bass lines and then make them work better. If I gave a drum machine line to a drummer, the drummer is going to make what I did on a drum machine sound fantastic because he's a drummer. And so even the guitar player is going to take the chords I gave him on the piano, and then when they translate them to the guitar, they're going to make them like really kick like a guitar player would. So I found like when you're by yourself, if you took all those parts and you didn't have other people, then they'll sound a certain way. But if you have people who are, their instrument is the guitar, their instrument is the bass, their instrument is the drums, then tends to enhance your idea and actually flush it out. So it's always good to collab. Sometimes you have a vision by yourself, and with the way you can do things in a DAW, you can kind of get really close to what you wanted. But working with other people always changes what you do, and then it makes you grow, because then you're like, wow, I wouldn't have never thought about how to do that snare line or the cymbals or the hi-hat the way a drummer can do it, and then it can add to your song. It can change the character of your song if you have somebody take something and they're expert at, and then add that to what you were doing. It's always good.
Totally. And I think that it really depends that those people that you work with, they are like, as humans and energetically, that they are your kind of people, that they have this energy that kind of matches to yours. And then you realize, I don't know, I've never had any like conflicts, or like any fights or anything like
A
that.
disagreement with the way somebody interpreted what you did. Yeah. So you work with people and you like what they've done. Like you gave them something and they enhanced it. You didn't have to say, well, that didn't work.
Yeah, it's kind of like the people, I don't know, in a ways it's just magical how we have kind of all come together. And how I'm like, I like to work with friends, but at the same time they are like professional musicians and friends, and it's just your tribe.
Yeah,
And
it's
then
simply
you
because some artists are very, very specific. And like even when they work with other artists, then they're like, no, I want it this way. And then other artists are kind of like more collaborative, and it's like they feel like, well, that works, and I'm not going to change it. But there's some artists that are very, very specific on how they want something done, and somebody could do a part and then they'll tell them like do it 50 times until they get the version they like. So like when you're working with people, do you do you feel that you have to have people do things over and over, or do you kind of let people interpret what they're doing and you don't end up doing a lot of recording?
I'm lucky, yeah, because I think the people that I've been working with, they just feel it.
Yeah, so they feel it. So you don't have to do a lot of rework. You guys are feeling it, and it feels good, and you don't have to do a lot of changes.
The thing is that if you try to sing something like 50 times, for example, I used to do that. I used to be like super perfectionist, and just do things until it's perfect. But somehow you realize that this 50th take, it's just it has the most
authenticity. Yeah, sometimes the first couple of takes are actually the real song, and if you go and do 50, you kind of dilute it.
Exactly, like emotional value, the emotion.
Yeah, it kind of gets washed away because the original feeling is on the first couple of takes. By the time you get to 50, then your original feeling might get actually degraded. and it might not be as authentic or as honest as what the original feeling was. And sometimes like the rawness of the original version is actually better.
Totally.
That's what I found too. I found over the years, like when I was in my 20s, I would do like over and over. I'm in my 50s now. And I find that a lot of the stuff I do now, first, second, third take, I don't go and torture myself on stuff. I just put it down. It's like, that's the one I'm going with, but after experiences, like once you've been playing a long time, sometimes you just, know what feels right.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's the thing that also that, I feel that I now have this kind of, I don't know, the good feeling that, actually you don't, if you have been practicing your craft, like the one thing is, this creative part, but the other thing is also like, for example, for a vocalist, if you are not, I think like if you're not confident enough and if you feel the need that you need to take 50 takes, like, then you're probably not good enough, maybe it's better to just like get good and like just kind of not to have any bad takes, so like that you feel that you are that you have mastered your craft to the level when you start going to the studio and like putting the first draft with an emotion and it's good already, that you don't feel, oh my god, it's bad, it has emotion but it sounds like crap, like I'm gonna throw this, it's just sad a little bit, like now, but it takes time and it's something that it just needs years and needs practice. And
I think like as you're an artist, like a part of being an artist is like having the confidence in your craft.
Yeah, exactly.
And then like I think some people might say, well, that's ego or whatever. If you're an artist, like that's what it is. I mean, if you have to have a certain level of ego to be able to believe in yourself, and that's like the minimum requirement. You have to believe in yourself. If you're out there and you don't believe in yourself, it's hard to get other people to believe in you. So
yeah, I mean, I think you need to be your own biggest fan first.
Yeah, you definitely as an artist, you kind of have to have that kind of front person, the Mick Jagger, the Daltrey, the Tina Turner. You got to have that bravado to a certain level within your own self. Not that you're going to be like them, but within your own self that you feel confident enough to be on the stage, that you believe that you deserve to be on the stage, and then when you can have that, then other people get drawn to it. And, I think that's a level where like most artists, artists that are performing, that you have to have that level, whether you can maintain it in your own life, is a whole nother thing. But when you're on the stage or you're doing the work, I think you have to be like on that level. But
yeah, it's exactly, I think it's also like it's something that I think like in ideal everybody, not only artists but people should kind of like, I think life is just so much more maybe I think life on earth would be so much more easier for everybody if everybody would kind of like accept themselves more.
yeah,
and would be themselves, because everybody, to, in a way, it's like for everybody to, wake up in this world, just go out and do the thing or live their life. It's already a thing to be proud of, that we are, brave enough to, like, to survive. So I think that everybody, feels, or like it's just, you just got to, whether you're an artist or not, but I think everybody should love themselves first,
Yeah, that's a really good sentiment.
Deserve the love for life.
But I think musicians are really, help people. People listen to music and they use it like therapy, musicians, some people, they really, they get through the day because of their favorite musician, it speaks to them. And so I think as artists, like you got to understand that responsibility, that there are people that, that take your craft serious. Your fans can really, it can really help them. And so I think the best thing to be as an artist is be honest in your art.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're honest, then it'll appeal to people. They'll feel it. And I think that's the number one thing, just be honest to yourself and your craft. And then it will just have to pay dividends just without trying to, earn anything. You're just doing it because you believe in it. But I really appreciate you being on. We're going to put this out. This is actually not recorded like live. People don't hear it as we're talking, but it's going to get published tonight. And it will be out on multiple platforms, 11 different podcast platforms, including Spotify and Apple and Google and Radio Public, Stitcher, like a bunch of 11 different platforms. And I'll send you the links that you can share with your fans. And so, yeah, this is going to go out, and we'll also put some links to your Spotify and your YouTube video that you reference on your Instagram.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. And when your album comes out, we'd love to talk to you. We sometimes have had artists come on and talk on their new releases, go like song by song, talking about it. And so if you're into that, when your album's ready, we could do that.
Oh, totally. Yeah, it's definitely something to take song by song.
Yeah. Well, we love to have artists like discuss their work, so that would be really cool if you're willing to do it. Yeah. We've done that with a couple artists that we've talked to in the last year when they've had releases. We've kind of gone through and had like an album release episode where we kind of talk about the inspiration and the concept of the album and how you did different things. But yeah, we like to go in depth. But yeah, we're very excited that you were on the show. We're going to push this out. We'll let you know when it's out there. It will go out tonight. And so thank you for being on the show. Yeah.
Thank you for inviting. It's so nice to talk to you with a real musician. It's nice.
Well, that's what we like to do. We've been doing it for 2 years. We like to give musicians a place to talk about their music and to be able to talk about it in a real way. We enjoy it because we like to be able to learn about other musicians and push people we think people need to listen to. So we think a lot of people need to be listening to your work. And so we believe in what you're doing. And so that's why we like to give every artist we talk to, we're into. So thank you for coming on to the show. And we're definitely want to talk to you again when you're ready. And have a great night or day, depending on what time it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Take care.